In the last stream, we were working on automating the production of these HDPE sheets because they're a key component in crafting SPS casing, which we need 72 of in order to build the supercritical phase shifter multi-block, which is going to allow us to finally produce antimatter. The only thing currently standing in the way of us getting that supercritical phase shifter is polonium. We need 288 polonium, and at our current fissile fuel burn rate of 10 millibuckets per tick, it's going to take about 4 hours to make 288 polonium pellets, which means if we want this done in a reasonable span of time, say maybe half an hour, that means that we need to be burning about 8 times more than what we're burning currently, which would mean 80 millibuckets per tick to bring that 4 hours down to 30 minutes. Now for that, we would need a lot more of these fission fuel assemblies. Right now, we have 10 of them in here. We would need 80 of them in here. And again, we might need more control rods as well, depending on how we change the size of the reactor. I think initially we can look at making the reactor taller. I've not really left myself too much room here. We can, of course, expand it out at least 1 block in all 4 directions. We can move the dynamic tank back by 1, and we can also move the basic pressurized tube coming in here as well. It does also appear, though, that we're out of fissile fuel, which mostly leads me to believe that there's probably a problem somewhere along the line with this setup. Oh, our problem is sulfur. We're not producing the sulfur fast enough. Like, we're not getting it out of this system fast enough, for one. And then we do have quite a lot of blaze powder. That's fine. This is actually close to banking up as well. But we're just not getting enough sulfur. So we're going to have to massively increase our sulfur production before we even think about making our reactor bigger. And I think this might once again be a job for the PRC here. We can put coal, oxygen, and water into a PRC, and that will produce for us hydrogen and sulfur. That sulfur dust, of course, is what we need to make the sulfur dioxide. That's what's stopping this system. The hydrogen, it's a little difficult here because you can't just delete the excess hydrogen. However, I'm fairly certain that we could make a gas-burning generator, this guy right here, and that will just burn the hydrogen and produce energy from it. Alright, so my inventory is a little bit of a mess here, but I think we have everything we need to make sulfur faster. So I've got another PRC. I've made the gas-burning generator, which is super easy to make. It's 2 steel casing, 4 osmium ingots, 2 infused alloys, and 1 electrolytic core, which our system already knows how to make because it's used for the electrolytic separator, which I've also gone ahead and requested as well. So let's have the electrolytic separator go down, I guess, right about, well, here, I guess. I thought I had that in my hand, but I guess the gas-burning generator is going on top. That is fine. Let's just set gas to auto-eject to the top there. Here, we're going to get yet more water from our ender tank network, and of course, we're going to use our basic mechanical pipes here to extract that down and around into the electrolytic separator. We should have at least a couple of flux points. We do in the system. Not that they're actually necessary at all, because we do have power being generated here already, and so this is going to produce hydrogen and oxygen. We need the oxygen for this to work, so let's set the left side here to output cyan, and let's just, for now at least, dump the excess hydrogen over in here. We need to set the right-hand side to input for gas. Fantastic. And then we also need water as well. So I think what we'll do here is break this step right here and just place that down like so. That should get water into the PRC. It does indeed. And then the final step here is, of course, going to be to connect this up to our Pretty Pipes network and then give that a retrieval module to have it continually pull coal. Now, I think I am going to craft a higher tier retrieval module here, probably the highest, just because I have a feeling that we're going to need to send a lot of coal to here. I have made 8 speed and 8 energy upgrades, and so we're probably going to start burning through coal quite fast to make all of this sulfur. So if I go ahead and drop a stack in here and we give it all of the speed and all of the energy upgrades, that starts making sulfur pretty quickly. We can set the left-hand side here to auto-eject items that should push the sulfur directly over into the ender chest here, which should then, of course, push that sulfur dust into this chemical oxidizer over here, which should kick our fissile fuel production back into high gear, we could probably do with making more speed and energy upgrades for this chemical oxidizer as well. And speaking of speed and energy upgrades, yeah, I have a feeling that we're going to need some in the electrolytic separator here as well. Again, they do get quite expensive in the electrolytic separator, but it doesn't require energy upgrades. And of course, once we get our turbine back online, power is really not a problem for us. We're producing way more than our electrolytic separators are ever going to use. Okay, so we'll start over here. We'll do 8 speed and 8 energy upgrades. That's going to start using the sulfur dust much faster. And then over around here, we can now start slowly adding speed upgrades, I guess, to the electrolytic separator until it is producing the oxygen fast enough. We don't want to go too overboard, I don't think, because again, this thing does really start to chew through power. You'll see already it's using 1,280 redstone flux per tick. It looks like it could do with at least one more here, though. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so now we are burning through the coal. Hopefully, our system is able to keep up with the demand. It looks like it is, potentially, but we're producing a ton of sulfur. Hopefully, we start to see this ender chest back up on sulfur at some point. I can't imagine that we're burning through it that fast. Although it looks like we might well be burning through it that fast. We'll see. And to be honest, I don't really know what the maximum amount of fissile fuel is that we can produce with one isotopic centrifuge. We might have to look at duplicating this setup again if we want to get enough fissile fuel to make the polonium and plutonium at a reasonable speed. But I guess really the only way that we're losing fissile fuel, 15,000, it's going down. I was going to say the only way to know is to make the reactor bigger, but that isn't happening. What is slowing us down here? Is it still sulfur? It's still sulfur. Sulfur is still the problem. There's not really much I can do here in terms of making the chemical oxidizer faster. It's already running at full tilt. Really, my only option is to make another chemical oxidizer. It looks like we are getting kind of batches of fissile fuel, which are pushing this up, but we're producing nowhere near enough fissile fuel to really meaningfully increase the burn rate of this fission reactor. We definitely can't go up to 80 millibuckets per tick. We're producing nowhere near that amount. So one thing we could do here is we could make another chemical oxidizer and place it down right here and give that 8 speed and 8 energy upgrades as well. At that point, that would start to produce that even faster. Although it does look like currently the problem is this electrolytic separator here is not producing the oxygen fast enough. And so if we give that a couple of speed upgrades, yeah, we should start to see this coming down fairly quickly. This here is already at max speed and max energy. And then, yeah, once again, the problem is the chemical oxidizer. And so, yeah, I think it might just be that we have to make another chemical oxidizer. And then after that, it might also just be that we kind of have to just make maybe another PRC to produce even more sulfur. Because unfortunately, there is no upgrade to a factory version of the pressurized reaction chamber. There is the option of doing blocks of coal instead of doing individual pieces of coal, which might not actually be a terrible idea. If the machine kind of still works at a similar speed, then the coal in block form could be a better solution. Let me give that a try. If we swap out regular coal in the retrieval module down here for blocks of coal, and if we grab some blocks of coal out of the system here, how is that? If I do this, how is that? It's definitely slower, but I don't know if it's 9 times slower. Like, it might be. I honestly don't know. We are producing power here from the gas burning generator, but it is just being taken out by this pipe and distributed to other machines. So that is effectively deleting the hydrogen for us, which is fantastic. Over there, it looks like we're actually backing up on sulfur? Oh no, it's just for whatever reason this produces a different kind of sulfur. We're getting one kind from the pulverizer and we're getting another kind from mechanism. I see, that's fine. The kind that is in the PRC right now is the right kind. This is the kind from mechanism, and it looks like right now the PRC is keeping up with the demand for one chemical oxidizer, but only just. It does jump back up before it hits 0, and it looks like it's holding steady. It goes up to 11 every time, which is a good sign, but it does mean that if we wanted to add a second chemical oxidizer, we would need a second pressurized reaction chamber to make that work, which should be fine because we could place it right here between the electrolytic separator and the gas burning generator, and that should work just fine. So let's see here. We do still have an enrichment chamber. We are going to need 2 more of the old chemical tanks, but other than that, we probably should have everything we do to make yet another PRC. Let's drop that down with more energy and more speed upgrades. Let's have you not do anything with uranium. Let's have oxygen also go up to the top. We have accidentally put some hydrogen in there, and unfortunately, I think mechanism machines do retain their inventories when you break them. I think here we need the gauge dropper, this guy right here, from mechanism to extract the hydrogen. Yeah, so you just craft the gauge dropper and then left click it over the tank you want to empty, and that will take the hydrogen out and store it in the gauge dropper. We don't really need that, so we could just kind of throw it away, but this is working. Let's do some more piping with our basic mechanical pipes. I guess we might as well do something like that. And then if we grab our power cables, we can do something like that. We do want to make sure the top is set to input there. And of course, as per usual, we need to set this to extract. Fantastic. And so if we send coal here as well, which is going to be very difficult with the way that I've set this up, Okay, I'm going to have to move the tank here because we need to have access to the back. So let's do something like this. We're going to move the tank 1 further out. That does mean that we're going to need even more basic mechanical piping. That is fine. We've got a ton of iron and steel. We can do this. We can do this. Then we can either run pretty pipes up to the back or we can extract from the back. I think we'll extract from the back, and I think we'll run the pretty pipes up from here to here, and then we'll make sure it disconnects on the electrolytic separator there. Once again, I will upgrade the retrieval module to medium and then to high, because I think we do need a lot of coal. It's quite possible we might have to get a higher tier EMC link for coal because we might start burning through it faster than we're producing it. But for now, block of coal south to the pressurized reaction chamber. Are you set to receive items? They are not. That is fine. We need to put input and put that back in. That's all good. That should start receiving blocks of coal. It does already have the speed and energy upgrades. That's as fast as it goes. And then we just need to extract out of the back of here and pump around into the chest. And of course, as per usual, we're just missing 1 singular pipe. And boom. All right, let's disconnect you, disconnect you, disconnect you, and make sure that you are set to output items to the back, auto eject on. So there we go. We're making even more sulfur now, which is good. And the final step of this process is going to be to make a second chemical oxidizer to keep up with all of this. So what are we missing for a second chemical oxidizer? A couple of things. The personal chest is pretty easy to make, although I think we might not have, any basic control circuits. That is fine. Everything that we currently don't have is requestable via our Pretty Pipes crafting terminal. And so let's see if we can't get a personal chest and then a chemical oxidizer. Nice. So this is going to go down right next to the pre-existing chemical oxidizer. So you're going to go down right about here. And hopefully, if we set this up correctly, we can have this receiving sulfur. Of course, we'll give this 8 speed and 8 energy upgrades, and then we'll set that to eject gas on all sides, and that should push the gas into the chemical infuser. All we need to do, of course, is once again change this to also receive from the back as well, like that. No, that's not correct. Oh, it's this one here, of course, like that. There we go. Okay, so now this is receiving double the amount of sulfur dioxide. It looks like, surprisingly, it's kind of wavering on power. We're using 109,000 redstone flux per tick. That seems like a staggering amount of redstone flux per tick here for this one little setup. We do, of course, have a big old buffer here, which is working. And we can see here that we're burning 240,000, which means we're using about 110,000 of the 350,000 that we're making. And so this is indeed working, which is good to see. We are producing the fissile fuel much, much faster now. I can't help but notice that we're not quite producing enough sulfur dioxide here because this doesn't seem to distribute evenly. And so we are still only using 1 chemical oxidizer, which feels wrong. Let me go check over here. Are both of these firing on all cylinders. They're not, because I didn't set this to output its gas to the left-hand side. There we go. Okay, so now we should be producing double the amount of sulfur. And also getting a little bit of extra power. Here, we are producing 2,720 redstone flux from this gas-burning generator, which surprisingly looks like it, for a second, was maybe filling up on hydrogen. Thankfully, it looks like it's using it all now, which is good. But hopefully, we should start to see both of these getting sulfur. Interestingly, it's not working. I think the trouble is the pipe that we have here. I think the pipe is only capable of moving so much at a time, and like it's being saturated by the one chemical oxidizer. If we replace that with an ultimate pipe, hopefully, yeah, there we go. We should start to see both of these receiving sulfur. Although still not, eh? Interesting. Why is that the case? This guy here is set to input on all sides apart from the right, which is where it's ejecting. So that should be fine. But then here, this is only putting the sulfur into this one chemical oxidizer. Yeah, for whatever reason here, if I this is not receiving any sulfur. If I disconnect this, the sulfur does all go into here. But then if I reconnect here, like that, suddenly this stops getting sulfur. Like I can put this in manually, but it just stops getting it. Despite the fact that there's tons of sulfur backing up in this ender chest, I have no idea why it's doing it like that. Let me try an item pipe from pipes, which is a pipe that we've not yet used so far in the series. But if I do this, and do we have, I assume we don't have a pipes wrench because we've not used pipes, but the pipes wrench is not too difficult to make. If I get rid of this, and I put a pipe down like that, and I set you to extract, which is just shift right click. This is now only transferring 4 items every second, but it is sending some of them here. And then it looks like it's not sending any there. That's fine. Let me craft a pipe upgrade. So the way the pipes mod works is instead of having multiple tiers of pipe, you just have the one tier of pipe, and then you can upgrade it with these pipe upgrades. So it starts with basic, goes to improved, then advanced, and then ultimate. And so with the advanced pipe upgrade, you'll see right now at the top there, it says transferring 4 items every 20 ticks, which is 4 items per second. If we put in the advanced pipe upgrade, now it's transferring 32 items every 5 ticks. And yeah, both of these are full on sulfur. So I'm not quite sure why the logistical transporter didn't want to send items to both of these machines. But either way, this does appear to be working. We are producing the sulfur dioxide as fast as we humanly can. And even then, it looks like we could potentially put a third one down, like a third chemical oxidizer, because in here, the sulfur is still the limiting factor. But over here, we are now backing up on fissile fuel. We've got an excess of it. And so I guess we can now look at making this reactor taller and seeing how this works. I think I'll start by trying to make it as tall as the turbine casing, and we'll see how that plays out. You should never shift right click and try and use the carry-on mod near this. I'm going to click scram. I think the way that the fission reactor here works, so long as there is no nuclear waste inside the fission reactor, when you break it, you should be fine. Like, radiation's not going to leak everywhere, and it should retain its fissile fuel as well. Fissile fuel, thankfully, is not radioactive. So let's make some more reactor casing, some more fuel rods, and let's make this just a little bit taller. And of course, we do have to remember here as well that we don't have to leave these gaps. So right now we've got 10 fuel assemblies in here, but we could fit 2, 4, 6, 8 more in the same spots. We could take this up to 18 without making it any bigger. We just need 4 more control rod assemblies. So I think I'll make 4 more control rod assemblies, fully pack in as many fissile fuel assemblies as we can, and then make this as tall as the room, and then we'll see how much that reactor can process. It's almost certainly going to be able to process more fissile fuel than we're currently making, but at that point we can then, figure out where we are and how long it's going to take, and then decide whether or not we want to make more fissile fuel or just wait for the polonium and plutonium. And quite a while later, we now have a much taller, kind of 2-layer reactor here, although it is still 1 reactor. I just didn't move this middle layer of casing, and now we are able to burn 63 millibuckets per tick maximum. So we can click activate, although I assume even if we try 20 here, I think that's going to be too much. I think we're going to start to lose fissile fuel. Oh, and of course, we have to make our dynamic tank just so much bigger and add even more dynamic valves to compensate for the extra fissile fuel that we're going to be burning. All right, so it looks like we're holding steady here. I'm going to press scram real quick. I have made this a lot taller, but essentially all I've done is added 6 more dynamic valves to the whole system. So we've got 3 more on this side and 3 more on this side for a total of 13 dynamic valves, all extracting with ultimate mechanical pipes into this reactor. And if we click start now at 20 millibuckets per tick, we are still going up on fissile fuel, which is good, and we're going up on coolant. Now, of course, we do then need to double up on waste barrels. Thankfully, the waste barrels do take a little while to kind of fill up, so we shouldn't have to rush that. It's not like while we test here, we're going to run into a problem where we fill up the barrels, I don't think. But let's see. If we try 30 millibuckets per tick, I'm fairly certain that coolant is going to be our problem. It is indeed. We actually got a little bit of damage there, which is not good. But let's try just adding maybe like 6 more valves and seeing if that solves the problem. Interesting. So here we have enough water, but the damage is still going up because the temperature is still high. Fuel surface area, 102 meters squared, heat capacity, boiling efficiency. I wonder if that's because I've packed these in so much. Like, let me try maybe taking out like the center line of fissile fuel assemblies here and seeing if that still exhibits the same problem. If we leave that empty and we put this one back in, and then of course we fill the roof back in with the glass, and we do this and this, that's going to reform. So now we've lowered our max burn rate to 56, but if I press start, yeah, it doesn't get as hot. It was getting up to 1.2 kilokelvin or 1200 Kelvin before. So it looks like it does matter a little bit how densely you pack them, but only really from a heat perspective. It looks like this is holding up just fine. And again, the fissile fuel, let's check here. We're still gaining. The fissile fuel is still going up, which means over here, for now at least, we are producing enough fissile fuel. We're not sending enough power there, which is insane. It looks like we might need to increase the elite cable to our higher cable. The elite universal cable can only move, it can move 400,000. So I'm actually surprised that that's not getting enough power. But real quick, before we get carried away, let's turn that off. And then let's figure out, actually, let's try, we could try 40, but I don't think that's going to work. I think 40, oh, it does work. It doesn't get too hot. 1.15 kilokelvin seems fine. It looks like 1.2 is kind of the point where it starts to take damage. The only problem there is heating. So again, I guess let's make even more. You know what? We'll put another 6 in. We'll put another 3 on each side, and we'll see if that alleviates our problem. That does work. We are backing up there. We do, of course, have to bear in mind the turbine. The turbine's producing 1.37 million redstone flux per tick, which is going to start to back up. We do need to increase the number over here. This is currently burning 350,000. I think we can make that higher, though. If I set that to 1.4 million, that is going to burn through the power, which again is something we have to do, otherwise the whole system melts down. But it looks like this is fine. I think 1.2 kilokelvin is the number to watch out for. If you go over that, I think the thing is going to start to take damage. If you're under that, even just by a hair, I think you're fine. So this is working, and we can burn 40 millibuckets per tick of fissile fuel. And we are going down. Over here, though, the problem now is actually the yellow cake uranium is not being processed fast enough. And it looks like the problem here is one of the retrieval module. Again, it's not a high enough tier, so we can upgrade that to medium and to high. And in theory, I don't know if that sticks with uranium. It doesn't. That's fine. We can do this and set that to enrichment chamber. Hopefully, that is going to request more uranium. And of course, this time we can make a factory version of the enrichment chamber if we need to. But hopefully that is going to keep that going and keep the fissile fuel coming in. We're backing up on fissile fuel there. That's fine. Let's try this again, though. It looks like it might be holding steady. So I think we can burn at 40. That's fine. Let me hit scram once again, hopefully for the final time here, because what I want to do before we continue is I want to get all of the radioactive waste barrels down that we're going to need. So previously, we were producing 10 millibuckets per tick of radioactive waste. That produced 1 millibucket per tick of spent radioactive waste, which meant we were doing 20 per second, which means we needed 20 barrels, and we put down 23. If we're doing quadruple that, we're now doing 40 millibuckets per tick of fissile fuel, 40 millibuckets per tick of nuclear waste. That means that we're going to need 4 times as many, so we're going to need 80 radioactive waste barrels. We made a stack of them at the start of today's stream, but it turns out that is not enough. Give me an extra batch of those, and let's throw all these down to ensure that we can dissipate any amount of spent nuclear waste that might come our way. And there we go. We now have 91 radioactive waste barrels down. In theory, we should only need 80 because we're producing 40 millibuckets per tick, which is 800 millibuckets per second. That then gets divided by 10 over here, and it should be 80 millibuckets per second, which would, of course, only require 80 of the 91 barrels that we have here. And so now, if we turn this on, we should be good to go. The turbine should be able to keep up with the steam production. This can handle a maximum of 1.3 million millibuckets per tick of steam, and right now we're only producing 800,000. That is fine. Over here, we're burning all of the power that we're not using, so the 1.4 million redstone flux. We got our buffer of a pitiful 102 million, but we're burning the rest of that as we speak. So we're producing like close to 30 million redstone flux per second and deleting most of it despite only having a tiny little buffer of 102 million, which means we could refill this in about 3 seconds if we ever ran out. But over here, this is doing fine. Water is holding steady. Fissile fuel production looks like it's also holding steady. It's quite possible that at some point soon one of these machines might start to falter, but I think everything is doing all right. I can't help but notice that we're out once again of sulfur. And again, that just seems to be the machine. The machine just can only make so much sulfur. We might need a third PRC because this is out, and then this guy is kind of holding steady, and occasionally this guy's going to get some. We might be okay. Potentially. There is a fairly good backlog here. This system looks like it's holding up all right. If anything, we might be a little low on sulfur, but for the most part, this should now be working. And because we're now producing 4 times as much plutonium as we were previously, it should now only take 1 hour to make the 288 polonium that we need, as opposed to 4 hours. That's after, of course, we get the 72 plutonium. That should only take 15 minutes, though, if the numbers are to be believed. Ooh, okay, stop. Okay. That is potentially a good catch, though. The good news is that the pressurized tubes hold a lot. There's 10,000 millibuckets of waste in there. Right now, our problem is the isotopic centrifuge. If I had just left this, that would have been bad, because now the isotopic centrifuge isn't able to process all of the nuclear waste fast enough. So give me 8 more speed and 8 more energy upgrades. That should be more than enough to get the isotopic centrifuge to a speed that's capable of processing the nuclear waste. And yeah, as I was saying, it should only take 15 minutes for us to get 72 plutonium pellets, because that's, you know, a quarter of 288. And if the 288 take an hour, then the 72 should only take 15 minutes. And given that we already have approximately half of the 72 required, it should only take about 7-ish minutes to get the remaining 30-ish plutonium that we need in order to then pivot over to polonium. So let's do you and you. Let's turn this back on. That's going to start processing, yeah, insanely quickly through all of that. That's fine. The pressurized reaction chamber is, I think, more than fast enough. Yeah, it's easily able to process 1,000 millibuckets of plutonium before the next 1,000 millibuckets come in, so that is completely fine. And so yeah, hopefully, if we leave this for about 7 more minutes, we should have the 72 plutonium that we need. One final thing, we need to disable the limit on the flux plug. With the limit in place, I think the same is true maybe here as well. Yes, with the limit in place, it will only transfer 800,000 RF per tick, and so we were actually backing up on power here. We're still backing up on power here. I'm not quite sure why we're backing up on power there, but just to be safe, I'm going to set this to like 2 million. And hopefully, there we go. That's going to just delete everything. Again, this has got a lower priority, so everything should go here first. All of our power should try and go into this energy cube and then out to our base before it goes in to this resistive heater to get deleted, but we do need to make sure that that is constantly empty. Okay, so we've actually run out of uranium. Okay, let me go and check on that. It's not necessarily surprising. We were burning through it at an alarming rate, but what is the problem over here? Oh, of course, it's just the same as we've seen previously. We need more speed, more energy, potentially some integral components, and possibly some flux linkage amplifiers. Just like with the iron, we could also potentially look at turning some of these machines into factories, but it's mostly just a case of getting a bunch of speed. We'll go for 32 and a bunch of energy upgrades. All right, so that should hopefully increase our uranium production. I've upgraded this to an advanced smelting factory, and I've put 8 speed and 8 energy upgrades into that advanced smelting factory. Over here, we've got the integral component and the 3 flux linkage amplifiers, and of course, if needs be, we could also look at increasing the speed of the purification chamber and whatnot going forward. But let's, real quick, make sure that is set to auto sort on, and let's go check over here. We did have quite a large buffer of fissile fuel, again, mostly because you can hold so much in the tubes, and it looks like we are finally starting to slowly but surely bank up again on fissile fuel, which is good. So over here, this is working. It's still definitely our bottleneck, is just how fast we can process this. We do have all of the speed and energy upgrades in here. We could potentially look at getting another installer. I don't think it's strictly necessary. I think that the machine is kind of doing a good enough job. It looks like we are backing up on fissile fuel, but just to be safe, we can put an installer in there as well. Over here, how are we doing? We're at 67, so yeah, we're very close to the 72 plutonium pellets that we need, and that did not take long at all, which is very nice to see. Let's quickly throw that basic installer into this guy. There we go. That's going to do 3 at once now, as opposed to 1 at a time, which should hopefully start to bank this up a little bit. And any minute now, we should get the 72nd polonium pellet, at which point we can just replace the isotopic centrifuge here with our solar neutron activator and start producing polonium instead of plutonium, which is exactly what we want. As soon as... we need to be careful here. As soon as we get what we need, we could do with, like, kind of turning this off. So let's turn you off at the bottom, so you no longer accept nuclear waste. Hopefully that's going to go ahead and... wait, that's the wrong tab. I need to go here and say you don't accept nuclear waste. That should hopefully just empty out of nuclear waste fairly quickly, unless it needs specifically 10 millibuckets, which it might. It's very awkward, because if I break this machine now, I'm pretty sure we get just radiation leaking everywhere, which is not what we want. Let me try doing that, just kind of turning it on and then off again. It's empty. Nice. Okay, so once it is certified empty, we can then close it, but then we do need to get rid of the plutonium in the PRC, and I don't think there's a way to do that. Will not decay inside a radioactive waste barrel. I don't know if there's a way to extract this, because I think if we try and do it with the gauge, I think we're going to just die. And so it might just be the case that I can break this. I don't think we need any more plutonium for anything. If I'm not mistaken, reprocessed fissile fragments, I don't think we need that. We only need so much SPS casing. And so I guess we can leave this here. I think we just need to make another pressurized reaction chamber, because there almost certainly is a way, but I do not know of a safe way for us to break that without causing radiation to leak everywhere. And so I'm just going to go ahead and hit request on yet another pressurized reaction chamber, and we can also grab another storage drawer as well. Let's take both of these machines, and then over here we'll put the solar neutron activator directly next to this guy, and then we'll put the PRC for that right about there, and then we'll put the storage drawer for that right about there. Perfect. So here, we're going to just run, careful, very careful, not to break anything that has nuclear waste in it. We're going to run this into there, like that. That will start working. It might need a line of sight to the sun, because it is a solar neutron activator. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that is working. That's outputting to the front, which is fantastic. We also need fluorite, and we need... is it water? Yeah, water. That's fine. Again, being very careful, we shouldn't need this setup again. So we should be able to take this ender tank and just move it over to this PRC over here. I'm going to turn this off temporarily so we don't end up backing up on anything. I don't want to break stuff. I should have turned it off as soon as I set the isotopic centrifuge to not accept anything anymore. That was quite reckless of me. But let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do that. That is going to go down there. Fantastic. All of you need power. The solar neutron activator, by the way, doesn't need power, which is very nice indeed. It just receives its power from the sun, which is super nifty. We can do you and you. That's going to receive power there. And then we just need to, again, move, I guess, the crusher here. Although, you know what? We could just change the output to the back instead of to the sides. And then if we grab some of our logistical transporters, we can just run that flow right along like that. Of course, making sure not to connect here or here. And yeah, it's just going to start working. We were producing a lot of polonium, but again, I think that's because we had a big backlog of nuclear waste. If we turn this on, I think, as per usual, we are probably, of course, I do not want to be a fool here, Isaac. Let's get the pressurized tube and let's extract from the bottom of this guy. Again, be very careful where we put our pipes. This right here is where we want to extract from, which is somewhat awkward because there's a pipe here. So let's do this. Then let's disconnect that. This is empty. That's perfect. We're going to run this down and run it along to there. Okay, that should be good. Let's set the bottom of that as a gas output, auto eject on. That's going to eject its spent nuclear waste around into all of these barrels. Again, there is a fair bit in here, but they should process all of that nuclear waste in time. And then the final piece of the puzzle here is just to set the front here to output, auto eject on, and we're going to start making polonium pellets. We're already at 13, and we can turn this back on now. I believe we are losing fissile fuel. Of course we are. Why wouldn't we be? And so we're almost certainly going to run into another problem there. This looks fine. It looks like, I think, that the PRC is able to process 1,000 millibuckets of polonium, yeah, easily before another 1,000 comes in, which is fantastic. That's what we want to see. Although fissile fuel, of course, is continually a problem for us. What is the problem now? The problem now is back on the other side again. Let me guess. Is it you? Yeah, so once again, now we have no sulfur. Let me turn the reactor off just in case. I think the problem likely now is that we're just out of coal. Yeah, we've burned through like 7,000 coal in the space of one episode, which is not particularly surprising. We have just one basic EMC link. I can't remember which one it is here, but we have one basic EMC link, which is producing, I think, 1 coal per second, which is not very fast. It was kind of fine before, but now it's very much so not good enough. So we're likely going to have to look at making higher tier EMC links, maybe even kind of much higher tier EMC links. Thankfully, none of them look particularly difficult. Let's take 2 of you, 2 of you. We should have 2 of you. We don't have 2 of you? Do we have any basic mechanical essence in the system? We do, thank goodness. And then do we have some of the other essences? We don't. Okay, so the highest we can go right now is this one right here, which is going to produce 8 coal per second, which I would think would be enough, but potentially might not be. Let's have a look. Let's we can steal the current coal EMC link, which is not any of... Wait, are we even producing coal? Oh, no, we are. Of course, it's being done over here. Right. Is the problem the enrichment chamber? Oh, it might be, actually. Let's do... Before we go making higher tier EMC links, let's do this and this. And then let's also get a couple of installers to make that even faster. Boom. And boom. Auto sort on. That should now be producing the coal substantially faster. The problem now potentially is just how fast it we'll turn auto eject on. Don't know if that helps at all. I think it might, because I think that the basic logistical transporters can kind of move more items per second than they can extract. And so setting that to export seems to have done a pretty good job there. And then, yeah, now the problem is the EMC link, which is this one right here. So let's steal this. And let's see about upgrading that as well to a higher tier. So to turn it into a dark EMC link, I think we have everything it takes. We do. And then for the tier 3 red EMC link, do we have everything it takes? We do indeed. And then for the tier above that, we also have what it takes. So we should be able to produce 8 coal ore per second now, which is substantially different to producing just 8 coal, because then we can run that through the enrichment chamber, which is going to give us 2 coal ore per second extra. So we're effectively producing 16 coal per second, which I would assume is more than enough. I don't think we're using quite that much coal. Like, we're using a lot of coal, don't get me wrong, but I don't think we're using 16 per second. Although we do have 2 blocks over here. Do these machines take more than a second? Is the question. Yeah, they take a couple of seconds to process a block of coal. If these were taking 1 block of coal and, like, using it per second, that would be bad. And would mean that we were not producing enough still, but it looks like we should be fine. These are going to slowly but surely back up on coal again, and we should start to once again slowly but surely fill up on fissile fuel. And so between streams, I'm going to go ahead and keep an eye on this, keep running this until we have 288 polonium pellets. Next time, we'll come back, we'll use those 288 polonium pellets, we'll craft up 288 black HDPE sheets, and we'll craft all of that together with our plutonium pellets to make the supercritical phase shifting multi-block that's going to allow us to finally start to generate antimatter. And as I mentioned earlier, then we can start to pivot and look at some of the other required items to craft the final star and the final star shard. Of course, all in our journey to craft the creative vending upgrade, but those are all problems for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Mechanical Mastery there.